words upon my tongue.
You will never be the same.
And with the full catastrophe, he didn't mean it was all bad.
God that I worship has a way of saying, don't play with me.
I invite you to the dance with the Lord of the dance.
God didn't call America to do what she's doing in the world now.
Please dance.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of Untitled, podcast where we take podcast/video series. Because if you're watching this on YouTube, you're probably saying, "Why is he calling it a podcast?"
Right.
The series in which we take verses from the Bible that have been misused and then beat them to death with a rusty spoon.
Woohoo!
As usual, I am still, despite all efforts to the contrary, Pastor Don. And I am joined by everybody's favorite two people.
Well, not everybody's. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But
I've got a list.
But I am Pastor Tim.
I'm Pastor Mallory.
Well, statistically, out of the people on this podcast, there are three. And I'm pretty sure that Tim is Mal's favorite person and Mal is Tim's favorite person. So statistically
That's
speaking,
true.
to a margin of error of one, they are everybody's favorite person on the podcast.
Hey, I'm
I
good
do-
with that.
I do like
Nothing.
So today, we are doing, as I mentioned, a very special episode, specifically because we've been doing, for this series, we've been doing the Bible verses that are pairing up with the Bible study that we're doing in concert with First Reformed Church of New Brunswick. But there's one verse that doesn't have enough meat on its bones by itself to do a whole Bible study on, but is still one of those where we can't not talk about it.
right.
So we're doing a probably short, but knowing us, maybe not, special episode.
Try.
Yeah, we're gonna try to keep it shorter, but we'll see how many Star Trek jokes and sexual innuendos we can make, and stretch it out there.
Considering what this verse is talking about, the sexual innuendos at least will probably flow like water and righteousness.
But yeah.
Be great.
All right. So
We have got
just go
a
ahead and-
single verse on the list here, and I'm going to kick it to Tim to read this one while staring meaningfully into the camera.
Yeah, let me just line up here.
Wait, Here, I'll help you.
I was gonna say, yeah, you just hold that, and I'm just gonna be
Yeah. By the way, Osteen, if you weren't paying attention now, we are looking at you.
yeah. So Leviticus 18:22. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. That's the one verse.
So we're going to talk about that. I did
Mhm.
promise y'all way back at the beginning we'd get here eventually. Those of you
Right.
on the Discord server and have been just itching for me to rip at this one, now is the time. You may thank your lucky stars and or Jesuses as appropriate. It is time to do the thing.
Yeah, let's tear this one apart. And
So, in typical Untitled fashion,
Mhm.
this verse seems very straightforward to me, as I understand it, as a progressive Christian who's done all his deconstruction homework. But I have to ask, has the evangelical church ever abused this passage before? I don't know.
No, I
Man.
can't think of a time. Just kidding.
you know
yes.
what? I think I can sum it up. You ready? The gays!
That's the one.
This is the one when I'm posting on TikTok, on any of our
What?
social media, anywhere, is how dare you? Leviticus 18:22 clearly states, which first off, Bible doesn't clearly state shit.
You're right.
Not in English, at least.
Yeah.
Like that, but no, it doesn't say what you think it says. And I would love for you to absolutely rip this limb from limb and make it so that they can never use this one again.
Tell them why.
So I am going to actually start in the style of my favorite motion picture director, a guy by the name of Jonathan Frakes. And you're already rolling your eyes because you know where I'm going with that. In the dramatic epic known as Star Trek: First Contact, who elected to start
That was coming.
No, I
Come
did. I
on.
just had to add the yawn.
Okay.
and he elected to start his movie by focusing on a tiny detail and then drawing back,
Mhm.
pull back to the most dramatic scale. I'm going to do exactly that. So
Let's do it.
we started with Leviticus 18, verse 22. Let's look for a minute. I'm going to read to you for a second, verses 19 through 23. We're starting from verse 19. You shall not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness while she's in her menstrual uncleanliness. 20. You shall not have sexual relations with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her. 21. You shall not give any of your offspring to sacrifice them to Molech and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. 22. We read that a minute ago. The gays. 23. You shall not have sexual relations with any animal and defile yourself with it, nor shall any woman give herself to an animal to have sexual relationships with it. It is perversion. Okay.
Wow.
Like, talk about the company you keep.
Right.
Like, if we set aside, and I'm going to speak specifically to the many, many conservative Christians who are clearly watching our program.
Obviously.
I wish they would.
It's their favorite one.
Let's take off the centuries of religious bullshit, for lack of a better term, off of this one for a minute, and just look at this by the company it keeps. Everything else in here, with the assumption that a woman on her period is, by the context of the culture of the time, super gross. Like, modernly, we don't see it that way. Like, we actually kind of respect women a little bit. Like, unless you're an American Republican, that's a different story. Like, generally, we respect women nowadays, but back then, like, a bleeding woman was considered on par with minor genocide. So with that cultural piece understood, everything surrounding verse 22 seems way more dramatic than couples in a loving homosexual relationship who aren't harming anybody. So right away, there seems to be a bit of a one of these things is not like the other.
Right.
Pull it back even more. And we're talking about things like verse 6, none of you shall approach anyone near of kin to uncover their nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, Noah. And by the way, you can determine whether I'm referring to the biblical Noah or to my son Noah, who likes to charge in my room in the mornings and randomly rip off blankets. Either way, still good.
I was gonna say, not wrong either way.
Yeah, most of the first chunk is who you shouldn't rip the clothes off without consent.
Yeah.
That's most of the first.
Everyone.
Yeah. Stop making people non-consensually naked, you weird people.
Yes,
Right.
stop it.
It's so weird.
Oh, once again, in the words of our, immortal Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, stop it.
It's just weird.
Yeah, exactly. So everything about this passage has to do with, like, consent violations and uncleanliness that comes as a result of that, and then the real big deep ones, which are seriously stay away from the truly icky, volatile, and disgusting things. And that's where we get verse 22 in the middle of it, which is, you shall not have sexual relations with, that's verse 23. I'm talking about not fucking a goat. Okay, you shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. First off, English is way more friggin' binary than ancient Hebrew in terms of word choice. I can't stress this enough. In ancient Hebrew, when you're talking about men and women and issues related to men and women, they will always use pairs. Hebrew loves pairs of things, so much so that Hebrew actually has 3 forms of word structure, where we have singular and plural. Hebrew actually has singular, plural, and dual forms. So they have a specific grammatical form for when there is just 2 of a thing. So they love duality. They love the parity of things. Not necessarily binary, but they love the kind of call and response structure that kind of does seem to exist somewhat in nature. Now, in this case, if you're reading this in the Hebrew, you would expect, okay, verse 22, you shall not lie with a male, ish, as with a woman, isha, it is an abomination. Like that Hebrew ish,
that would
male,
make sense.
Yeah.
Woman, isha. Those are the 2 words. Like, literally, that comes from the story of Adam. The original ish, and then isha, literally from Adam. Like that parody you would expect of what's being used here. But instead of using the word ish for you shall not lay with a man, it's using the word zakar.
Yeah.
Which is, now, I don't know how many of you have done your studies of ancient Hebrew before, really converse in the language. You may recognize this not the same damn word.
What?
Crazy.
Yes. Now, as we discussed before recording, it's worth noting there is some scholarly debate, even in the Jewish communities, as to what exactly Zakar is referring to here. There's one school of thought that generally holds that Zakar is referring to a sort of young boy slave or something like that. There is another that refers to it more as males in a concept of like disparity hierarchical social relationship. What is true here is it's not referring to a gender construct or like a gender physical gender so much as a social construct.
Yeah.
So you shall not fuck this particular social construct of people that we generally kind of associate with masculinity, but we're not referring specifically to biological males here. Beyond that, not a lot of clarity as to what it's referred to. But in either case, and I want to make this clear, whether you are looking at this as a social construct based on dominion, or whether you're looking at this as young boys in a slave state relationship, neither of them are homosexual couples.
No.
Correct.
Like, be totally clear on this. By the way, it also, like, if you're looking at this from a traditionalist aspect, does it really make a whole lot of sense that it would say, dudes, no homo, but lesbians go have fun?
Right.
No, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Bible doesn't work on Pornhub rules.
What? The Bible-
Unless you're Abraham. Unless you're Abraham. I got to put that caveat in there.
Yeah.
I thought they were the same thing.
Yeah, right.
You've destroyed my worldview.
Yeah.
Well, you brought up the cleanliness part. Like, this is the part that's always stuck with me.
Oh, hey, no, I brought this up to you.
No, but I've thought this before we had that talk, but you've definitely brought it more to the
Let your
forefront
wife
of my
have
mind.
the credit for a thing, man. Come on.
No.
Thank you.
It's definitely been brought more to the forefront of my mind since we've had those conversations. But it's man, why would they say that a man shall not lie with another man, but not say that women shouldn't either? Man, it's almost like when a man does have relations with another man, usually it's going in somewhere that has waste matter that comes out of it.
They didn't know how to wipe their butts.
Yeah. Like daily washing started, what, 300 years ago?
Something.
You know, I would be willing to entertain that as an interpretation if it weren't for the fact that anal sex, both in heterosexual and homosexual relationships, was wildly common in that period.
Right. I'm
So-
saying with like the unclean woman while she's, having fun there.
Like, I would say that makes sense as a reason for why modern day puritanical Americans are like, ew, butts are gross. Like, because
I mean, they are.
something we know about the 1600 Puritans is they sucked at personal hygiene.
Yeah. That's
Absolutely. To the point where there are still leftover writings from the Native American tribes that specifically describe how absolutely terrible the Puritans were at self-care and hygiene. So,
Man,
like,
still sounds
as a
familiar.
modern construct, I can definitely buy that. But in those days, like, it was literally all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't even necessarily buy that anal sex is unclean was part of the argument.
Gotcha.
Right.
I don't think that was it. I think that, and we've talked about this with the Bible before, what's being mentioned here is an argument about consent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which
And
always.
yeah, the Bible was ghost written by William T. Riker, consent fetishist. That's a thing.
I knew that you were gonna bring it
Go to
up.
timeout.
You know me. You know me.
It's Star Trek
always
timeout.
like you. All right. So consent is the issue. So the abomination here, and like, I'm not going to get too into the physical and biological mechanics of heterosexual or homosexual sex. One I know a bit about, the other I don't know quite as much about. But I will say, at a general rule, the Bible had a lot to say about the uncleanliness of blood, and two, in an unconsensual encounter, what we're
Lots
gonna
of-
wind
Probably
up
gonna be
with,
quite a bit. Yeah.
yeah, it ain't gonna be any of the happier liquids you might likely encounter in a sexual encounter. No, it's gonna be the other stuff.
Yeah.
So you would be literally producing, because blood was the ultimate uncleanly thing to the ancient.
Right.
So, and if you look at this, like everything else here, like having sex with animals, women in menstrual uncleanliness, all of this has to do with like producing things that are physically unclean. And if the people of the time really didn't have much of a hang up on the backdoor entry, it has more to do with the generation of an unclean state, which the biggest unclean state for the ancient Hebrews is bleeding, particularly out of the genital region.
Mm.
And so when we look at this in the broader context of consent, like all of these suddenly translating zakar as something to do with either male dominion over people, so use of sex as an abusive tool to create social hierarchies, which is the thing they did, or
Right.
young boys as in male slaves that are well below the age of consent anyway.
Mhm.
Either case, like we're talking about a consent violation that almost certainly led to an emission of blood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
Again, I'm not one to judge, but if that's the way you're approaching your sexuality, I might judge a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
if non-consensual sex is your definition of a good time, I might point out the fact that that term is an oxymoron. And you're just the regular.
Yeah.
So, like, that's really what's at the heart of this passage here is stop raping people, y'all. Like, please don't do that.
Right.
And
It's weird.
Yeah. And the reason why women don't get the nod here in terms of sexual consent is because women were property.
Right. They were already
They
at the
didn't
bottom
have
of
consent.
the
When
heap.
we
Yeah.
talk about like zakar as male dominion over their property, like whether it's referring to slaves or whatnot, like wives were on the same level as slaves in ancient Hebrew society. So like, whatever you're sticking your dick in, make sure it's okay with that.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Please. For God, please. Can we please? Like, that's all I got.
To be fair, some people still need to learn that lesson.
No, I know.
Looking at you, Trump. Looking at you.
Mm-hmm. Often.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's just keep it open. Looking at you, the whole length and breadth of the Republican Party in America.
For
Right.
real.
It's like,
Good
yeah,
Come
we
on,
know
man.
there's people that they're like, oh, we don't have that problem. Yeah, there's some of you. Get the other ones.
Yeah, man, get your friend.
Yeah, you know, without getting too far afield, there is an argument that I've often had with people I know who are police officers and soldiers. A very unpopular argument, I'll admit, doesn't make me very popular at parties. That choosing to be part of a corrupt institution, an irredeemably corrupt institution, is a form of sin and corruption.
Yep.
Which is why I argue that there, you know, ACAB, man, like there's
Yeah.
you know, it's hard to find a legitimate justification for someone being a police officer. Like, go work at Wendy's, man. Like, if
Right.
that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. And
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying to you, and I'm 100% with you. I have that stance of, you know, ACAP, but I'm not calling you as a person.
Right.
That. I am calling that profession that you've chosen to take on. You put that suit on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You are choosing to become this.
Right.
And
that is
you're
not an
choosing to step
identity.
into it.
It's not an inherent characteristic. It's
No.
a choice that you make. It may be a difficult choice to step away from. Like, it may be financially difficult. It may be socially difficult. You may lose friends. You may lose relationships. You may get shot, but hey, folks get shot anyway. Like, but no matter which way you look at it, it is a thing you can choose not to be. The same is not true of being a member of the LGBTQIA community. You can't not choose to be that. You can choose to hide it. You can choose to pretend it. You can choose to deny it, but you can't choose to not be it. It is a fundamentally, like, the science is in, y'all. Like, it's built in.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the same way that I can't choose not to be all about that woman waiting for me when I get home, or probably still at work because that's how it is. I can't choose not to be all for that. Built that way, and she's fantastic. In the same way, like, I got a number of good friends who are, you know, not straight, and they can't not be about what they're about because that's just how they are.
Like, and we love each and every bit of it about everyone.
Exactly. Like, I think you guys are awesome. Like, you love who you love. I love who I love. Like, you know, great. And one of the, I know this is getting longer than a short special episode, but whatever.
Yeah. We did great.
Yeah, it's going to be what it's going to be. I grew up in a conservative environment as a conservative with conservatives in a conservative church environment. And one of the constant refrains about homosexual, particularly male homosexuals that I encountered was, ew, I don't want them looking at me like that. Like, and I gotta say this, and maybe being massively morbidly obese for most of my life made it easier for me to process this. Just because someone's gay doesn't mean they think you're hot.
Right.
And if you're having that problem, they probably really don't think you're hot.
Yeah.
Also, can we go back to like, why do you think everybody wants to, get with you?
Mm-hmm.
'Cause
Yeah,
they
like
don't.
there is an arrogance inherent in the belief that homosexuality is a threat to your sexuality. It means one of two things. It means either you're gay and you won't admit it, or you don't understand how sexual consent works. Neither of those is really a healthy place to be.
Nope.
Right. The best thing to illustrate that I've seen is I grew up in a society that really pushed heterosexual norms and, heterosexual imagery on me, and yet I still turned out gay. What does it say? How fragile is your straightness that
Yeah.
one LGBTQ couple on a TV screen can really threaten you?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I have met and spent time with and really enjoyed the presence of many different and varied couples and groups in the LGBT community for most of my life.
Yeah.
I have never once encountered anything I would remotely consider threatening or an abomination or even problematic.
Mhm.
Like, the most respectful and kind and compassionate people I know tend to be somewhere in the LGBTQ community.
I
Like,
mean, hi.
I'll admit, like, this is a problem I run into when we're talking about sex and gender identity. It's a problem I run into when we're talking about national identity. It's a problem I run into when we're talking about race. I wish I could be part of that group, like, just to have a group of kind people I'm a part. But I'm a white, aggressively straight Christian pastor male from America. I don't really get groups that I could be a part of ethically.
Poor baby.
Well, you're
by the
welcome
way,
to hang
this
out with
is-
ours anytime.
Yeah. Side note, if we ever do a conversation about the radicalization of America, like what I just said there, like, we can sarcastically throw our "oh baby, poor you," like, well, I'm part of a group that's had oppressive privilege and power for years. Like I benefit.
Right.
There's no arguing that. But
Right.
the lack of a group that you can like ethically conform to is the root of why a lot of people turn to white supremacy. They're like, well, fuck it, I'm going to embrace my group then. Like,
100%.
and screw all the rest of you. Like, the pull to that is extreme because we all want to be part of a group. And like,
Right.
so when people say like, yeah, I'm opposed to the LGBTQs and their agenda because it's eliminating traditional marriage, I'm like, you're just saying that because traditional marriage, as you define it, is the group that you've tried to lash your identity on. Because the way our culture is structured right now, you don't have one you can ethically ascribe to. Like, I get that. Like, I still personally feel like the pull of what used to be called traditional masculinity.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Like, I'm a straight man who came out of that environment. I like strength. I like those powerful masculine imagery. It speaks to me, and I don't want it to most of the time, but it does.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're being ethical and nice and compassionate, all of those things.
It's when you step in and recognize that you have that privilege and that you do. And I'm, just speaking to you specifically is you're using that privilege to shine a light on those that don't have it.
Correct.
That's the difference. And those are the people that they do want involved.
And we talk about intersectionality a lot when we're talking about race and all these different issues. There is an intersectionality that occurs with white, straight, Christian American men that is almost like, we talk about like black and gay, for example, as intersectionality, which are things that definitely deserve to be talked about. But when we talk about that right there, that's almost a reverse intersectionality: white, straight, Christian American male. That reverse intersectionality puts you in a place where you have all of this social privilege and ability to shine that light, but it carries with it an obligation that doesn't have a commensurate relief. You're only ever helping yourself. You're never getting help. And that's the point. It is righteous. Like that is socially, historically, where we are. We're in a time where that particular group has the obligation to do all, get nothing. But as humans, that is freaking hard.
Yeah, it doesn't make it fun at all.
It is, if you do it right, it's the most exhausting space to live in, just about, or at least one of. like where you are constantly on output, never on input.
Yeah.
And if you start getting into input, you have to wrestle with the fact that it's kind of ethically questionable.
Right.
And that is a very exhausting space to be in. And as we approach these discussions, it's important to recognize for some folk that they look at that and say, do not want.
Yeah.
And like, well, that is not an ethically legitimate position to hold. It is certainly one that we have to start from a position of at least understanding.
Yeah,
Right,
definitely.
because we're still humans.
That's
Yeah.
been our walk with having conversations like this, is recognizing where people are coming from with it. It is hard. And I'm never going to be the one to say, you know, and this is going to be wildly unpopular with both sides. It is mentally hard to be in that place where you have all the rights and you are working, like you said, and you're doing the output and not getting any input back. But God, are you appreciated?
I mean,
Like,
let's look at just at a very different sort of way, but it's still the same thing of how I took care of my brother. I mean, I've constantly been an output with him, and I finally, a year ago, looked at him and said, I want to be your sister, not your mom. I love you. I wouldn't change it. I want to be your sister, not your mom. Because I want us to have the give and take. And as just brother and sister, I can do that, and it is an ethical thing to do, but you can't do that when you're in a spot of privilege.
And there's a divide between that. Like, taking care, what you define there, and I'm going to generalize here, and I may be wrong about that. What you define there sounds like the evolution through and out of a toxic configuration of a relationship.
Correct.
What we're talking about with, white straight Christian men in America is not that. And the analog wouldn't necessarily be to your relationship with your brother. The analog would be to the relationship you have where you're taking care of your brother because he has a major physical disability because you beat the hell out of him when you were a kid.
True.
Yeah, that would be the real equivalent.
That's the real equivalence here. And that's what men in my category are dealing with right now is we have all the responsibility, but it's not a toxic. Many of us experience it as a toxic relationship and are willing to shuck it because of that.
Right.
But that extra piece of responsibility, because we're the ones historically who caused it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to clean up other people's mess of the same category.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, we're not cleaning it up because we specifically caused it. Like to the best of my knowledge, like we do shit accidentally, so I may have, but to the best of my knowledge, I've never intentionally gone out of my way to harm any member of the LGBTQ community. I've really tried to be as
right
about that as I can. But I also recognize that like my father and his father and his father before them have either actively or ascribed to communities and groups that did.
Yeah.
So it is, I did not personally do it, but the groups that I'm a part of, like it or don't, did. And I spent a long time arguing the position of racial and cultural gray areas, like where you can effectively leave a group but not be able to enter another one. So, for example, I am American in name, but I live and operate in Japan. I don't have any particular cultural ties to America. Like I spent most of my cultural upbringing here as well as there. So like, I'm not really American, but I kind of am.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I live in this kind of gray area where I can't totally leave being an American. I can't not be a white American, but I also kind of aren't either. So you have this gray area here where you're like, now what the hell do I?
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
Pretty much this. Yeah. Thank you for coming to my therapy session.
Right. Yeah.
No, I mean, you're spot on though. It's where can you help? And that's the question you have to ask is, I don't like the big thing is they've got to realize like, and when I say they, I mean like the white, straight Christian man.
I know.
Yeah. But no, it's recognizing that no, there's not input coming because you've already got it all. It's already sitting behind you. You don't need it.
Yeah.
You're taking this thing that's been sitting here, you're not using in the way that it needs to be used. It's the rich man with the eye of the needle again. It's going back to it. It's take that and give it to who needs it. You're still gonna have yours. You've still got your personal stockpile. Give all this crap you're storing up to other people that need it and that you've basically beaten over the head with it for decades.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And we're not gonna solve every form of discrimination in a
Right.
5-minute podcast. Yeah, and if it were that easy, God, I would love to do it.
Right. Yeah. Same.
But it's not. But I hope this at least points us somewhat in the right direction. Do we have anything else we wanted to peer into, or do we want to kind of round it out for our turned out to probably be about a regular length special episode?
Yeah.
I mean, we did really well at keeping this short.
But it's important.
It is important.
Yeah. It's a
But
necessary.
no, I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right. So the usual caveats: like, share, subscribe, check out the links down below, and whatnot. I'm going to rush through our outro because I'm really starting to feel the effects of that vaccine I got last night. Ooh, I could use a break.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's bedtime here.
It
so.
is bedtime.
Yeah, maybe bedtime for me too, but I got to ride my motorcycle home first.
Be careful.
Yeah, I will.
After the motorcycle, please.
No crashes.
Only a reasonably responsible level of wheelies, I promise.
Okay.
I can deal with that.
Exactly.
All right. So if you've watched this far, links down below, the Discord server. You've heard us rant about this for forever. Christmas is coming up. We've got a Bible study going on, bunch of stuff, links all on the various websites below. But most importantly, if you have any questions, if this particular has been an issue that you're struggling with, reach out to one of us. We're happy to talk more about it. Like, it's popping off on the Discord server for sure, but our private contacts are also in there somewhere too. You can try it. Or just like contact on YouTube and say in all caps like a boomer, "I want to talk and don't know how," and one of us will probably
do it. We're good.
Do it for the lulz, please.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Most importantly, have a great week. I'm not actually sure where in the sequence this is going to wind up getting released, but whatever time this actually winds up coming to you, I pray that your week and or time between here and the next video is good and wonderful and God blessed, as I know it ought to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Take care, y'all.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.